All right, hey, we're here today with Ben Christo from the Sisters of Mercy. Hey, Ben, how are you doing? Thanks for talking to me
I'm
today.
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, well, first of all, I want to start off with talking to you. I want to find out a little bit more about you as a musician. I'm not terribly familiar. I apologize, but I want to
Problem?
find out about where you came from, how you got into music. I know you have a couple of bands, Diamond Black and Night by Night, that you've been in. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey into the music business?
Thank you. So I started playing when I was about 10 years old, and I found that when I was a kid, I was always inspired by the music you'd hear on the radio. It would always be the songs that had any kind of guitar in it. So even if it was a Belinda Carlisle song or a Michael Jackson song or whatever it was the ones that had the solos and the guitars in it that had a slightly harder edge that attracted me to it. And I often would find myself playing like air guitar, or I have a vivid memory of standing on a chair at my uncle's place playing his it wasn't a tennis racket. For some reason he had a hand axe, and I remember playing this hand axe like a guitar with his school tie tied around my head like a bandana. That's like one of my earliest memories. Is that so? That was sort of my starting point. That I felt so energized by any guitar-based music, and the very first shows I ever saw, live shows, was AC/DC and Judas Priest in pretty quick succession as a 10 or 11-year-old. So that had a deep impact on my journey. And I started playing guitar. Either I was already playing or roundabout then. Um, and through my sort of teenage years, got into little school bands and did a battle of the bands where we won the regional competition and we appeared on local television. So I was already having these little affirmations when I was a teenager of this thing that I like doing, that I'm passionate about. I must have some ability in it because these are the results. We're getting things are going somewhere. And then my first proper band, where we actually had a record deal and we did some national touring when we were in magazines, when I was around about sort of 1920 through to about 24, 25, we did some touring around the UK with bands like Avenged Sevenfold, AFI, Alkaline Trio. So again, for us as a local band from a fairly, not Bristol is where I'm from. It's not a small town, but it's not the main town in England. It's a lot of bands will pass it by. So we were always able to secure the support slots often with these bands coming through town. Um, and with bands like AFI and Avenged, it was when they were on the way up. So they were still playing venues of, say, sort of 600 capacity venues, and we would be supporting them. These are arena bands now, but we had this chance to play with them then. And so again, I had this affirmation that the thing I like doing, alternative music, guitar, singing, backing vocals, songwriting, was something that was worth pursuing because I was getting results. That band, unfortunately, that band was called AKO. That band, unfortunately, fell apart after we did South by Southwest in Texas, which, if you've ever done that as a band and you're doing it DIY, what an amazing experience. Incredible. It's also fucking hard work because you're going out there as just a band with no support whatsoever and trying to make your way around a new country, a new city. And it was, I think it just took its toll. And after that, I moved to London to look for some new opportunities and wound up in the Sisters of Mercy, which was a band I'd grown up listening to.
Oh,
So I used to listen to them on the bus to school. So it was a very surreal but sort of life affirming experience. And yeah, that's sort of really, I guess, where my professional career truly began.
that's interesting. And how is it sort of being in a band that started the year you were born? And
um, that's a really good question, and I guess the main thing about it is that surreal quality that I still have sometimes. We'll play certain songs, we'll play live, particularly stuff from the Vision Thing album, that I will remember listening to it on the bus to school vividly of, and never dreaming of how could it ever be. I mean, I thought the band was German for whatever reasons. I thought the band was German, possibly because of Eldritch's strong German connections and his ability to speak it fluently, and references to Hamburg and stuff in Vision Thing. But I thought the band was German, and so to have somehow ended up in it was pretty surreal. Yeah.
How did you make that? How did that connection all happen? How did you become a member of Sisters of Mercy?
Well, I still don't really know how they got hold of me, because I got a phone call one day from a mysterious voice that just said, we're an internationally touring band. We're looking for a guitar player. We think you might be good enough to audition for us. Didn't know who I was speaking to, didn't recognize the number. It was all very mysterious. I thought it was a joke. And so I kept asking questions about, well, what's the band? What are you doing? The guy wouldn't tell me. He was like, well, it's sort of a mixture between Motorhead and U2. And I was like, okay, we're doing an American tour. We need a new guitar player. Come and have a jam. What shall I play? What shall I audition? Play some Hendrix licks. Okay. So I remember traveling to this audition on this bus that was called the Megabus, which is the cheapest form of transport that you could get at the time in England. Some
Yeah,
journey,
yeah,
right? Well, they have there. Okay,
yeah.
it's still going. It's still going, and you used to be able to travel between cities for £1, like £1 a journey, plus booking fee. And I remember being on the Megabus with my guitar, just like playing Purple Haze, thinking, "Am I going to need this? What am I even auditioning for?" And I was very what's the word when you don't you don't believe in something. I was feeling really like uncertain about it, and skeptical. I was feeling really skeptical about the whole thing, because it just seemed like this is too good to be true. It must be a trick. It must, where's the catch? And I go along to this audition. Remember, I don't know what I'm auditioning for. It's just some band that's going to play in America. Okay. Um, and so I go along to this audition, and I'm taken into the room in someone's apartment. It wasn't even a rehearsal studio. It was like the downstairs room in someone's apartment. And there's three guys in the room. There's a guy with a guitar and a mohawk. There's a guy with a laptop. And there's a guy sitting on a sofa with a pair of shades on and a can of beer. And I'm just asked to play some riffs. So the guy with the guitar and the mohawk plays a riff. Can you play this? Yes. Can you play this? Yes. I can't read music, but I'm good at learning by ear, and I can pick things up quite quick. So it was relatively straightforward for me to do that. And I realized in hindsight what they were playing was riffs and songs that they'd never recorded but only played live. But the songs and the riffs still had a quality to them that made me think of the Sisters of Mercy. There was this sort of cruelness to the riffs. There was this sinister kind of edgy nature to it that made me think about the Sisters. And I thought, well, if it is them, which it won't be, because that would be amazing and that would just be unreal, I'm going to play a famous riff by them to see if anybody says anything. So I just started playing this riff, the Dr. Jeep riff from the Vision Thing album, and instantly the guy on the sofa with the shades and the can of beer goes, "That's one of our songs." And I was like, fuck. And I remember this so vividly, Max. I looked down, my hands were shaking, because not only was I in the presence of a band that I hugely admired, I was on the cusp of being in that band. What the hell? And I was very grateful that I didn't know what I was auditioning for, because I'd gone in there just being like, yeah, whatever, and not feeling nervous at all. Whereas at that point I was like shaking. So that was it. And then they gave me a call. And I've often been asked, like, why didn't you recognize the guys? And there are two reasons here. One is that that particular lineup of the band, because there hadn't been any albums released with that lineup in place, that lineup hadn't really been immortalized in a famous image. Secondly, the way that we recognize people is about context. So, and this can often happen even on a much like lower down scale. If you see someone that you know from one social or work area of your life in a different context, like say you go on vacation somewhere hundreds of miles away, and that person that you just wouldn't think at all is there, you might not recognize them or notice them because you just don't expect them to be there. And I was in a band a few years ago for a while where this happened absolutely perfectly, because I was in the dressing room and with this band that I was on tour with, and this man wanders into the dressing room, this middle-aged man with sort of ginger hair wearing black. I thought, who's this? A security guard? Oh, it's James Hetfield, right? And because he was into that band that I was playing with at the time, and he just like walked in. And context, if you'd said James Hetfield's coming up, of course I would have recognized him instantly, but I had no idea that the Het was going to walk in. So it took me a good sort of 10 seconds to go, oh, it's James Hetfield. So remember, I'm in a situation here. James Hetfield is one of the most famous and recognizable musicians on earth. So I'm in this room, and it's only once I figure out it's the sisters that I realize that the guy with the shades and the can of beer must be Eldritch. Um, and then suddenly I recognize it. This is where I am. This is what's happening. So a lot of how we recognize people is about context. And because I had absolutely no idea how the hell could I ever be in a room with those people. And then a couple of weeks later, no, a couple of days later, I get a call saying, and very casual, yeah, we think you might be our guy. So let's start doing some rehearsals. Turns out the guy on the phone in the first place who first called me up was Eldritch himself. It wasn't a manager or anything. And so yeah, it was a pretty surreal experience. And the one little extra bonus about this story is that when they called me up to tell me that I'd got the job, I actually missed the call. They said, we're going to call you tomorrow at 2 o'clock to speak to you more about it. I missed the call. I'd left my phone upstairs. I was downstairs, and I was like, fuck, I missed the call. And I instantly phoned them back because I knew it was them. I knew it was them. And I was like, I had to figure out what happened. And it went straight, not to answer phone, it went to fax machine, right? Because I was ringing a landline, and what they must have done is somehow switched it, like, oh, now it goes to fax machine. And I was like, I can't get through to them. I can't get through to these people. It's going to fax machine. What the hell do I do? So I then sent the only fax I've ever sent in my entire life by going up to like a local internet cafe where they had a fax machine and faxing the number with this message that said, hi, it's Ben the guitarist. I'm so sorry I missed your call. I'm really interested in the role. Please give me a call. And it turns out that the fact that I sent that fax saved me, because their attitude was, if this guy can't be bothered to answer the phone, then who knows what else he can't be bothered to do. But because I'd shown the sort of lateral thinking and the initiative to send the fax, that sort of saved me. So I'm very grateful for that internet cafe in London for sending that fax for me.
What a fantastic story. Um, so once you got into the band, so you're in now, right? So
Yeah.
what do you think your biggest learning curve working with Eldritch and working within the construct of previously created music that you go through getting into it, or
I
did you
think
just
it was
pick up?
about changing, first of all, changing my perception of what the band was. For some reason, I remember going into it thinking it was way more metal than it really was. I was basing my approximation of the entire band's work on the Vision Thing album, which is more heavy. It's still not metal; it's like hard rock. But in my head, I was like, this has got to be really metal. I've got to really impress everyone with everything that I do. So every time there's a riff or a lick or a solo, I have to try and make it as interesting and as complicated as I possibly can, so that people know that I'm good, or that, or not, or not necessarily that I'm good, but I want to make sure that with every opportunity, I'm showing the full scope of my ability. So on that first tour, I really was not playing for the band. I was playing a lot more, I think, for myself, to sort of go, hey, look, I can do this, rather than it's really cool to not do stuff, and leaving space for the song. And Eldritch taught me a lot about how a band is like an engine and everything has its part. And if that just means you're doing the same thing over and over and over for 7 minutes, that's a hard job and you do it well. You don't go, oh, this is boring. Everyone will think I'm rubbish because I'm only doing this. Not about you. It's about the song. It's about people's enjoyment of a work that is special to them and is meaningful to them. And if you start messing around with stuff too much and going off on different tangents from like a very famous special piece of music, then you are breaking a contract, I think, that you've made with the listener of something that's important to them. So that was what I learned earlier on, and Eldritch got me to listen to a lot of the Atlantic bands, like I think like Sam and Dave and Booker T and Al Green, to really hear how the instrumentation works together on these classic records where it's very much about the song and about the groove and about playing behind the beat. And so I think learning that, coming from essentially like a metal hardcore background where it all been like, we've got to riff as much as we can all the time, to then, in fact, in this song, you've got one riff to play for 7 minutes and that's it. And you've got to, and that's the job. And learning it, in fact, it was much better to just stand with your foot on the monitor and look out to the audience, or like beyond the audience, playing this one riff, than be like crouched down, checking your fretboard the whole time so you can do as much shred as possible. What makes a better performance? What is more dramatic? What's more theatrical? It's the person who's there just that, rather than the person who's like, well, certainly for this band, and the person who's just staring at their fretboard. So that was an important lesson, I think, early on. I had to shift over my way of playing. And it took me many years, I think, to get to a point where I felt like I was genuinely doing a decent job at that. Whereas I do think now that I've managed to got a handle on that role after 18 years. Whereas I really didn't for the first few years.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but are there some newer Sisters of Mercy songs that have not been recorded yet that you guys play live?
That's
And
correct. So
were you part of the creation of those, and how did that
yes,
work?
yes. So in 2019 through to 2021, we had this incredible burst of like a very prolific burst of creativity of new songs, where we wrote maybe over 20 songs in different and there's still stuff now. In fact, we're looking to do some more writing sessions, and I've revisited some of the works that we didn't quite finish during that period and bringing them out again. And we were incredibly prolific. It was probably a combination of lockdown, because it was that period, and we worked a lot of stuff remotely. And in various locations across Europe, we would get together in like in a bubble and work together for a couple of weeks on songs. And yes, so of the set now, certainly the set that we just played around Europe, and we're just about to go and play on another little short European tour, it's sort of 50-50 old songs, new songs. And all of those new songs have been co-written by myself and Andrew and Dylan Smith. So it's really exciting to have been brought on board as part of the writing team for a band that I thought for many years I wasn't good enough to write for. I didn't have the songwriting skill, and maybe I didn't. I probably didn't. It took time for me to understand, how do you write a Sisters of Mercy song, and how do you do it in a way that is Eldritch approved, and it's quite a hard thing to do. So he's got a very high
Standards, yeah.
quality control, yeah. And I think when there are a lot of bands who try to, as there have been over the years, a lot of bands who've tried to copy what the Sisters do, the reason why they've done it wrong is that they've either overcomplicated it, or they've made it too, what I would call on paper, like sad dark, rather than cruel dark. In terms of the way that we do things, it's quite unforgiving. It's sort of relentless. If you think about something like Lucretia or More, they're not sad songs. They're driving, kind of cruel, unforgiving sort of songs, and that's the vibe you get to it. That's sort of like walking determinedly down the road in your leather jacket. It's that feeling. It's not sad. And I think a lot of people, when they try and copy the Sisters style, they just make it like sad, or spooky, and that's not really what this is.
Is that why he has such an aversion to the goth label?
Possibly. I mean, that's
You're allowed to stay in the studio at any time.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a huge part of it, that the Sisters don't really write sad songs. It's not like maudlin mourning songs. There are a couple of ballads, sure, but they're always still swathed in this sense of like cruelty and cynicism. There's never a song that's like, I'm really sad because my relationship's over. It's always cloaked in sort of mystique, and it's oblique, and it's sort of sharp edged and acerbic. So I think an aversion to the goth thing is that sense of sadness, which isn't what the band is about. The band is about bringing people together. It's about inclusivity. It's about empowerment, and also the comedy that goes with a lot of kind of goth stuff, where it's this whole like Halloween Dracula spooky sort of thing, which again isn't in line with what this band is about. It's not a kind of cabaret act. It's something that has very important personal and political messages.
Now, with the new music being there, and kind of not having it recorded, what made this the time to go out on a tour like this of America? It seems pretty extensive, and you're going all over. So, is there a particular something that sparked that? That's like, oh, we need to get out there. We need to tour.
We hadn't played in the States since 2008, and then we played last year. And I think the difference between the 2008 tour and what we did last year, because I was on both of them, was pretty extreme, in terms of we were certainly playing bigger and better venues by far last year than we had done in 2008. The band was more galvanized as a unit because we were playing a lot of our own work that that particular band had written together. Whereas when I was in 2008, the band were playing songs that none of us had written. I think there was maybe one or two songs that Chris Catalyst had co-written. He was playing guitar at the time that we were playing. But there wasn't that sense of unity that we had on that last tour of these are the new songs and we've done them together. And I think part of the reason for coming out again on this tour is because last year went so well and we really enjoyed it. I mean, it was one of the best tours I've ever done with any band personally in my life. You know, we were playing sold out shows at Hollywood Palladium. You know, this was a dream for me to be doing something and to be playing my own work that I'd co-written in these iconic venues. It was incredible. And there was a buzz was created about the band, and we met some really amazing people in terms of some people that have really inspired me, came to some of the shows, and it was just an incredible experience to be in the presence of some of my heroes who came along. Because one of the really special things for me about the Sisters of Mercy is that my heroes are of the age that they grew up on the Sisters of Mercy. So I've been able to meet a lot of my heroes because Eldritch is their hero, right? So I've been able to play in a band with the hero of my heroes. And that's given me access to meet some people that, as I said, are my inspirations. I met there was this surreal moment where I was in Vegas, and I was hanging out with Scooter, the singer of Cold, who are a band I absolutely love.
From
Right?
Jacksonville. We're out, yeah.
Yeah.
They're from here.
Who again I grew up listening to, and they were a huge influence. And of course, Scooter's a Sisters fan, so we met that way. And I'm backstage with Scooter, and we're just hanging out, and because it's at the that Vegas festival, Sick New World, and we walk around to watch Seven Dust, who are another band I absolutely love. And Scooter's going, "Hey man," to Lejean from Seven Dust, "Hey man, let me come up," and Legion's like, "Yeah, come up." And he's like, "Oh Ben, I've heard so much about you," and gives me a hug. And I'm thinking, this is unreal. If you could tell me as a teenager that one day I'd be hanging out backstage with these guys, it's just unbelievable. So when it comes to trying to define like what is success, I think success, certainly for me, one of the elements of success is being able to work with, or at least feel that you can be in the same kind of sphere for a while as the people who've inspired you, that you've been welcomed into that sphere. That to me feels really special.
That's amazing. Let's get a little bit about you without music. Take away music. What do you do in your sort of downtime or your spare time? Do you have any other hobbies or recreational things that you like to do?
Yeah, well, I'm actually really trying to get into doing more and more of that, because what's happened over the years is I've been so focused on music, that I haven't given myself much downtime. And I've learned in recent years that downtime is extremely important to be good at what you do, and to have the time to feel energy for what you do. That's why usually most people work 5 days a week and have a weekend off. Whereas when you're doing something creative and you're self-employed, you often think you need to work all the time, because you might miss an opportunity or whatever. And also because you're passionate about it, you can get caught up in I want to work. But What I've found in recent years is that I've really wanted to make myself go and do other stuff. So I've got into board games more, um, into board games, and there's a board game cafe just around the corner from where I live where you can just go in on a Monday night and just it's like an open gaming night, and you can just join in with whomever's playing. I went to an event on Saturday night called Blood on the Clock Tower, which is a really cool. I don't really know how to describe what it is, but it's like this murder mystery game that you can play with like a games master, and there's lots of quite complicated rules, which it was a little bit difficult for me. But what I love about board games is it connects me with my childhood again, but in a way where I feel like I'm branching out in a social environment that isn't to do with alcohol. Because a big change for me was 2.5 years ago. I stopped drinking completely because it was having a very negative effect on my life. I believe I am an alcoholic, and I had to tackle that. And going into sobriety now for 2.5 years and finding new ways to socialize that aren't to do with drinking was challenging because I've done a whole lifetime of, well, hanging out means drinking, right? But unfortunately for me, I wasn't able to manage my relationship with alcohol without it having a detrimental effect on some of the positive things in my life. So, yeah, so board games has been a good way to connect with people, where you have to have your wits about you, and it's exciting, and it can be really um, engaging because you're sort of, if you really get into a game, you're taken completely out of your present situation. And I believe that truly relaxing is being able to disengage completely with your work life and your real life for a while. Sometimes if you're watching a movie, that's not even enough because you start thinking about other stuff because you're being passive. But when you're actively involved in something, you have to be focused. And I think that's when the true relaxation and regeneration of yourself can come.
Well, that is fantastic. And I got to tell you, we are so excited to have you guys come. You're going to be doing the only Florida show in St. Augustine. And we love St. Augustine as well. It's just south of us. So we're all going to be down there hanging out, listening to it. So, and I appreciate your time. And we're going to see you in September.
Thanks. So cool. So cool. Great questions. And thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate it.